Okay, I think I am live. I'm just going to give everyone just a few minutes to come on and see if anybody come on before I start to talk. Bear with me. Okay, I see that I am live.
Okay, I see that I am.
Okay, let's turn that down. We don't want that. But I just wanted to make sure that I'm on here. Yeah, and that I'm live. Listen, hello and welcome to week one of Life Lessons with a specialization in self-actualization and resiliency. I am your instructor, Yashika Foster. So, this is going to be an amazing journey over the next 8 weeks. I know it will. And let's get started. The first thing I want to do is talk about the workbook. At this point, you may have received a workbook. If not, please let me know and I will go ahead and I'll send that to you directly if you haven't received it. But the workbook is about 29 to 30 pages. And the workbook that you should have received is called Being. Okay. Now, if you have problems with printing the workbook out, then by all means, just get a little composition book. And whenever we have an assignment, just go ahead and number it so you can know what week we're on for yourself, or take notes or whatever the case may be, so that you just keep tagging along with us, right? If you're not able to print up the workbook. And then that way, in the composition book, you can just go ahead and write whatever you need in terms of answering the questions and the homework. And then when it's time for you to post or time for you to respond, just go ahead and use those notes. Now, none of the assignments will be emailed to me by no means. This is for your own record because this is your own personal journey. Okay. This is your own personal journey. All right. So this is why it's called Being, because the workbook is called Being, because this is existence, right? Self-actualization. Okay, let's talk about self-actualization. What is self-actualization? And in this week, I want you guys to really, for week one, to really dive into what you believe self-actualization really is. Now, I will give you some history on it here in week one because that way you can know. But at the end of this, when you go to do your assignment, please think about what you think it is and what it means to you. But we will talk about the assignment a little bit later on during this reading. Doing this live. Okay. So, what is actual self-actualization? First, we make choices based on our needs, no matter what, right? We make choices based on our need. So, what that means is, I remember I was watching Squid Game season two, right? Squid Game season two. And one of the things that the man did was in the movie, he went around and offered people two choices. Either they can take some bread and eat because they were hungry, or they can take the a lottery ticket. Now, the people that he offered this to or gave the choices to, these were people who were, they looked like they were homeless or, just living on the streets. And so some people took, matter of fact, the majority of the people took the scratch off, right? Because in their mind, money was more important than eating in that moment, because they felt like, okay, if I eat this sandwich within an hour or two, I'm going to be hungry again. But if I get this scratch off and I actually win, then it'll be something more long lasting, right? And so that was the mentality of it. And so his thing was, if you're really hungry, why would you choose a possibility as opposed to something that is right there in front of you? Having a sandwich right in front of you, if you are hungry, that is like, okay, that's immediate gratification. However, taking a scratch off, right, isn't saying that you're willing to risk this chance, this one chance that you might be able to eat today or whatever, and take the scratch off because you feel like money will last longer if you win, right? So that just really shows you how needs are, that demonstration or that particular episode of that show really showed you how needs of a person is met first. Like, what do they think is valuable at that moment as opposed to anything else? So, what is more important to you, to save your life or to risk your life to save someone that you're close to, right? Again, this goes to hierarchy of needs, right? So when we talk about our careers, what do you think is most important? Thriving relationship or a thriving career? Okay. And so I ask these questions because again, we make our choices based on needs. What do I need right now? What is going to give me that level of understanding or that level of contentment or comfortability that I'm okay with this for right now. So the question is, what is more important to you, to save your life or risk your life by saving a family member? And then another question, is it more important to have a thriving career versus a thriving relationship? Now let's talk about self-actualization. Self-actualization is, according to Abraham Maslow, basic needs must be satisfied before higher needs are met. Okay, now when we talk about the term self-actualization or the hierarchy of needs, I'm sorry, when we talk about the hierarchy of needs, the needs in which a human must satisfy is in this sequence. This is according to Abraham Maslow, because he believes that in order for a person to get to certain levels in life, certain needs have to be met first, which takes priority over everything else. So the way he has understood it, or the way he demonstrated, right, was number one, psychological needs, right? This is your need for food, shelter, things like that, right? If I'm hungry, okay, if I'm hungry, I can't be thinking about what everybody else got going on. So I cannot move on to the second, third, or fourth of his needs, or even the fifth, which is the self-actualization of the hierarchy of needs, if I'm hungry. Because if I'm hungry and my stomach growled, I can't think about nothing else. Okay. I can't be productive in society if I'm, because why? Because I'm down here trying to figure out how I'm going to eat. Right. So the basic need, the first need is psychological, which is your food and shelter. The second one is safety needs, right? This is your needs when you talk about your security, when it comes to health, when it comes to resources, when it comes to employment, right? Your security, the idea of knowing that you will be able to live another day with what you have, a job, a career, you got food in the refrigerator, as opposed to some people not having those things. So because of that, right, they may have food but don't have safety, meaning that they may be able to eat today, but for whatever reason they now have to say, okay, well, where am I going to lay my head? Okay, or better yet, where am I gonna find security, because I'm living in this dangerous world. So each need has a place in according to Maslow. Before you can even get to a certain level, you have to take care of the first four, which is number three, the need for love and belonging. This is family, right? This is having someone that you know is going to be there for you, someone that you know is going to, you feel connected to, a sense of connection to, right? Everybody has a need to feel love and belonging. Okay, everyone. Some people may pretend like it's not necessary, but trust me, it's necessary. And matter of fact, it's required. It's required. Not only is it necessary, but it is also required in life, right? I say so. And then number four, the need for esteem. This is your confidence, your respect, right? This is the way that you present to the world. Like I present to the world, am I, this way or that way? How do you show up in the world? This is your confidence. This is hierarchy need number four. Now, Maslow also believed that in between four and five, there was what we call meta needs. Your meta needs are your esteem, and I mean, excuse me, your meta needs are your growth needs, right? These are your needs for truth, goodness, beauty, wholeness, vitality, uniqueness, perfection, justice, inner wealth, and playfulness, right? In other words, when a person has because this is between four and five, this is your cognitive and aesthetic needs. If I show up in the world as this beautiful woman, right? Okay, or I feel that I'm this beautiful woman, then guess what? It takes care of my need for esteem. It takes care of, because at this point, to show up this way, a lot of times you have to have all of the other needs taken care of. Because I know, you ever hear the expression that it's a good thing people don't their faces don't look like what they've been through. Well, if you are a person that's struggling to feel protected, right, to feel safe in this world, or you're struggling to be able to eat day to day, you're not going to be worried about what your skin look like. Okay, you're not going to be worried about if you're pretty today. I mean, it might be on the back of your mind, but trust me, it's some things that's more important in that moment than you worry about instead of aesthetically. So, according to Maslow, your meta needs, although not part of the hierarchy of need, it's also part of what's needed in a person's life before they can get to the fifth level, which is self actualization, right? And that's where we all want to be. We want to be on that self actualization because self actualization is, and I'm going to read it verbatim, the motivation to develop one's full potential as a human being, fulfillment. In other words, this is the part in your life where you feel like you are living your purpose in this world, right? You are living your purpose in this world. I will say this. One thing I know about being self actualized, because I feel that I am the poster child for a person that's self actualized. And that's why it's very, very important for me to teach this course to others because I think it's something that is needed in life. It's needed in life. It's needed in life to be able to understand your full potential and to go for it. To know that whatever your gifts is to this world, you're operating in that. Those other areas of life have to be taken care of before you can get there. But what I do know about life is everything is connected. Everything is connected. I've always lived my life that I know sometimes it's kind of hard where we look at life and we say, okay, this happened. And because this happened, I can't do this or it's prohibiting me from doing this, right? Think about that. Is that how you look at life? And if so, why? Is this something that you were told? Is this something that you believe because of the things that you saw growing up or what? Right? In other words, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you believe what you believe? I know for me, I believe that everything in this world is connected to another incident. We don't know, and I mean, granted, when we're in it, when we're in the struggle, when we're in the fight, whatever you may call it to be, right? The unknown, trying to get to the next level of life, we may not understand why this happened or that happened, right? But you do know. Let me tell you a story real quick. I've always been a woman that was very stouty, right? Very stouty, what we call stouty. I've always weighed between 165 and 185 pounds on any given Sunday. That was my weight. Even when I became, when I had kids, I would get back to that weight, right? Now, for me, as a young girl, I didn't understand why I couldn't be a size zero. I couldn't understand why I couldn't be a size zero because I had never been a size zero. In fact, when I joined the army at 18, I went in weighing 178 pounds, if I can remember correctly. When I retired 25 years later, I came out weighing 175 pounds. Okay. I think it was 178 and then 175 or 178 and 174, something like that. But I was literally within my 5 pound range of when I had came in at 18, and here I was retiring at the age of 43. And so for me, as a young girl, I couldn't understand again why I couldn't be a size zero. So I didn't want to be 170 some pounds as a young girl. But one thing I do know is that I was always strong. And what I don't mean just strong as in, I mean strong. Like I'm telling you, when I was a kid, I was able to power lift. I was powerlifting, I was lifting weights. I was doing shot put a distro in high school. There was a lot of things that I did do that showed strength in my physicality, my physical abilities, right? I remember I had a boyfriend that broke up with me because I was able to bench press something that he couldn't bench press when we were kids. Like it was a whole thing. But I do know that I've always been strong physically, right? Mentally as well, but especially physically. Like you can see the strength of me. I come in a woman that's 5'7", which is not short by anybody's standards, and I come in at 175, 180 pounds. And so I come in, don't not looking like I'm a damsel in distress. Although I would love to be a damsel in distress, one would not automatically look at me and say, okay, yeah, she's, she's this, she's that, right? Because I don't fit that statue, right? I don't fit that statue of what society says what a damsel in distress, the characteristics of a damsel in distress, or the aesthetic looks of a damsel in distress, right? So I tell this story because what I recognized about myself also was because of my abilities and my strength that I knew that when I joined the army, when I turned 18, that it was not going to be something that was going to be hard for me because I knew that physically I could do it. Now, mentally is something different. You don't know what you know until you get there, right? But I did know that mentally, or excuse me, physically, The military was going to be something that I was going to be okay in because I knew I was physically built for it. I knew that I was physically built for it. I'm the size of a what is it, a NFL football player. Okay, now he the goalie, he the one that kicked the goal because they weigh about 175, 180 pounds. Okay, he can't be no quarterback or nothing like that. But the goalie is about 175 pounds. So I am the size of an NFL men's team. Okay, kicker. All right. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because why? Because it helps me in this world because of the things that I have to do. And being physically strong is something that I pride myself on. And even to this day, I continue to maintain it. And so I tell this story because when you're young or when you're going through something at that moment, right? Because you want a lot of times we want what we don't have. We want the opposite. You'll have people that have curly hair, they want straight hair. You have people that want straight hair, they want curly hair, right? Sometimes we want what we don't have until we have it. And it's like, okay, well, did I really want that? Okay. So I understand that everything in life is connected to other things. You may not understand it at that moment, but it is. Okay. A self-actualization, a person that is self-actualized understands that. Okay, they do. They understand that. They understand that you're not going to see the purpose of something that happens right now, but in time you will see how it's connected and how the universe sends you what you need as opposed to what you want. Okay, but again, all these needs have to be met before you can get to that self-actualization stage, which is number 5 of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, now some of the characteristics of a self actualized person. I just talked about one. Like they understand that everything in the universe is connected to each other. They understand that we're not going to get clear that our we can't what is it they understand that we can't be caught on our outcome, right? Because our outcome of what we want things to happen may not be what the outcome needs to be, right? A person, because why they go about life and said, you know what, I only control what I can control. Everything else, I leave it to universe, right? And so some of the characteristics of a person is self-actualized, realistic orientation, rather them being fearful of the unknown, they view life as it unfolds logically and rationally. In other words, they do not try to force something to fit if it doesn't. I don't fear the unknown of something. What I do is that I just do it. And in that moment, if it's something that's new to me, right? Like say you're deciding that you want to do a new adventure, you want to go for another job, or you want to start something new, like be a YouTube or Instagram, whatever. You want to be a content creator, right? Granted, there's going to be a certain level of fear that's in you. But a lot of that times that fear is in you is actually motivation, right? It's that because you want to have a little, okay, well, this is kind of scary for me because why? Because it's the unknown. But a person that is self-actualized, they understand that the unknown is part for growth. Like if I don't put myself out there to be a content creator or to be someone that's doing this and doing that, then I can't evolve to my highest self. And part of me evolving to my highest self is something telling me that this is part of the process. So when it says go live or do this or do that, you do it. Why? Because you may not see everything, because you know it's part of a bigger picture, right? Self acceptance and acceptance of others. A person that is self actualized understands that, hey, it is what it is because they accept themselves for who they are. Again, when I talked about me joining the army and me weighing a certain amount of pounds because I thought that I was entitled, key point, entitled. Like most girls that I knew in high school, middle school, they weighed 100 pounds soaking wet. I think I was 100 pounds in 5th grade. You see where I'm going with the story? Okay. So I didn't understand why I was always bigger than a lot of the girls that was in class with me. Because in my mind, why couldn't I be this 100-pound woman? Right? Why couldn't I be this 110-pound 18, 19-year-old? Nope, that wasn't me. At 18, 19, I was 165, 170, 75 pounds, right? And so that's just the way it was. But what I also knew was that I had to learn to accept myself because that wasn't for me. But what I recognized later, right? Because it takes time to get there. You don't just become self actualized as an 18, 19-year-old, right? It takes time to get there. And I was raised in an environment where a lot of my basic needs were met, but they weren't on a level where it was comfortable. One of the things that I had to worry about as a kid was housing. Not that I worried about it, but we moved year to year. right? Not only that, but my mother was on welfare for the majority of my life, or the majority of my youth. And so for me, although we never went without food, my mom did what she needed to do. There were things that we still had to worry about. So when I became an 18, 19-year-old adult, that was my first thing, to make sure that I put myself in a position where food and shelter wasn't something that I had to worry about. And that's how the Army came into play. That's how I knew that joining the military at that age will give me those things. So therefore, I knew that I would be protected in those ways. Now, I didn't know it at the time, because 18, 19 years old, I didn't know about no Maslow. Okay. I didn't know anything about no Maslow, and I sure didn't know anything about no hierarchy of needs. Okay. That took time, right? When I went for my associate's degree, my bachelor's degree, and then my master's, because Maslow was part of all of it because of the courses that I've studied. Now, another characteristic of a self-actualized person is that they look in the world still enjoying awe. Like, they can literally still look in the world enjoying all. They don't always see, like most people that are self-actualized, they don't see things as the cup being halfway empty. We see it as being halfway full. In other words, even in the midst of things, you can always find some things to be grateful for. You may not see it, you may not understand it, but if you look deep, you will always find some things to be grateful for. And so Maslow talks about that. He says that this is one of the characteristics of a self-actualized person. You are grateful for things. And sometimes, when we're operating from a place of need, right, we may not see it. There's an old expression that you can't see the forest for the trees, because sometimes when we're here, we can't see long term, right? We can't see long term. So one thing about a self-actualized person, they still look at the world in joy. They still look at the positive in life. Why? Because we have to, in order to move forward. It's okay to feel, it's okay to do all those things, but you have to in order to move forward. My life as a youngster growing up in Detroit and having a single mom, being on welfare, and us having to move from place to place, I know that that taught me a certain level of resiliency that I didn't even know I was going to need in life, of course. But here we are, and I'm teaching it, right? Because this is where it stemmed from. That part of my life where I didn't have an understanding, because we saw, when you're young, you see kids that's doing things, you see kids that have different things than you. And for whatever reason, you like, okay, well, why don't I have this? But then as you go older, you understand that, hey, listen, certain people had certain things because of money. You didn't have these things, but then I had to also look at it, looking back, well, wait a minute. I had an amazing life, right? Because what I did know was that although I didn't have these things or that things, I had love, I had security in my mom, because I knew she was going to make it happen, right? And so when you're younger, you don't see those things, but as you get older, you start to understand security and all that is part of it. You need those things, right? Autonomy and independence. A person that is self-actualized understands autonomy and independence, right? They are a person that has full autonomy and they're independent. For me, I love being around people. Like, I love being around people. I love mingling. I love going out to new places. Like, I make it a point every day of my life to meet a new person. I kid you not. I make it a point in my life every day to meet a new person. Now, there's times where I may not go out the house. That's understandable. But if I'm going out of the house and I'm doing something, I will have a conversation with somebody. I don't care if I'm at Kroger's. Okay, I don't care if I go to the dentist. I don't care where I go. I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, and I'm going to find out one thing about that person that I did not know. All right, that's how I am. But at the same time, I love my alone time too. I love being able to go and do things by myself. I love being able to sit at home when my daughter or the kids are gone. I love all those things, right? I love, just taking myself on a date for lunch or whatever. Like, because why? I need that alone time to really understand what my life, to really put things into perspective. If you're constantly around a lot of chaoticness, right? You can't even hear your own thoughts. So although I love being around other people, for me to pour into myself, I have to be alone. This is part of me as a coach, as a self-actualization coach. I have to self-soothe myself, right? There are things that I have in my life that I do every day. I mean, when I say every day, I mean every day. There are things that I do every day, and this is part of me pouring into myself. And I need this in order to be able to to go out to the world to be this self-actualized person. Why? Because I know that I can't get these things from other people the way that I want them. So I have to be able to give these things to myself. And part of that is self-soothing, right? And that's why I love my autonomy and my independence, right? But also, that also says that I don't easily adapt to somebody else's ideas. The way that I am as a person, if someone tells me something and it doesn't meet my rationality, I'm not going to do it. I remember when I was a young soldier at 18, 19 years old, I went into the military. And because I went in as enlisted first, and then later on I became an officer. But in the beginning, I went in as an enlisted soldier. And I remember this E7, I was an E3. This E7 told me, he says, this army, you're not going to make it in this army. He said, because how did he put it? He said, because you're not supposed to ask questions, because he said to do something. And I was like, that don't make no sense. That was me. Okay. I was the kid from Detroit. Okay. Still rough around the edges. So that didn't make no sense for me. Doesn't make any sense. And I'm not doing it that way. So at the time, my name was Davis, PFC Davis. And what he said to me is, PFC Davis, you're not going to make it in this army. He said, because this army, you don't ask questions, you just do. I said, well, I guess I ain't going to make it then. Okay. But I did make it after 25 years. Why? Because I understood sometimes there are games to play. But at the same time, I'm not going to conform to something that doesn't make sense to me, or something that doesn't meet common sense to me, right? That's part of my autonomy, being able to have my own ideas about things and doing it the way that I see fit, not because I'm trying to go along with everybody else or get along with everybody else, right? And then, of course, a person who is self actualized, they value their privacy, right? They value their privacy. And again, that's that part of being with other people and then also being alone, right? Now, for this week, we have the mirror. The mirror moment is what you're going to focus on this week. In this mirror moment, this is where you go in and okay, for let me open up my workbook for the mirror moment. This is week 1. So the mirror movement. So this is where you go in. But first, before we talk about that, because I want to do this right here is just an introduction to self-actualization to let you know what it is. But I still want you to put it in your own words. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to see yourself self-actualize? But before we get to week's 1 assignment, I want you guys to look at the beginning of the workbook. After you read the hello, and then you go to the beginning of the workbook, which is page 5. Right here, I want you to start putting down your 8-week goals. So week 1, what is it that you want to accomplish in week 1 in this course, right? And then you go on through week 8. Okay, by week 8, what do you want to have? Now, these things can be done all at once, or you can do them as the weeks progress. So this is week 1. What do you want to learn from this week? And then if there's something that I can assist with on anything, please make sure you send me an email. If it's something that you're not clear about, make sure you send me an email. But these are your goals, right? Because in order for us to live life to our fullest potential, right? According to Maslow, we have to go through all areas of the hierarchy of needs, starting with number 1 before we can get to self-actualization, right? So week 1, how can you start working yourself towards that in order to by week 8 you feel like you've gotten what you came here for, which is self-actualization and resiliency, right? Now, one thing about the goal sheet is that if you feel like there's something that changed, like say for example, you did everything now weeks 1 through 8, and then come week 3, you realize that you know what, I have another goal. By all means, update that. Okay, update that. This is your life. This is your life. This is your plan. Right? This is you. Self actualization. You oneself. Okay. Now, after you've done that, then you go on to week 1, which is the mirror moment. This is when you get to tell your life story, right? It says, and it says not the highlighted reel, but the truth. In other words, what have you done or are doing that reflects alignment with your true self? And I'm gonna give you a little example of that. And I don't know how, but when I was 12 years old, I decided that I wanted to join the military. Now, do some people make those decisions at a young age? Absolutely. Some people know. Some people don't know what they want to do, and that's okay. I'm just telling you my story. And through this course, you will see that a lot of what I talk about is from my own personal experiences. Why? Because again, I see how everything that has happened is connected. Nothing is just by itself. Everything that has happened in life is connected to one way or the other. right? You have to go through certain things, or you have to experience certain things in order to open your eyes up to other things. It's just the way it is. So now, with that being said, I knew at 12 years old that I wanted to join the military, right? So later on, I discovered that if I took ROTC in high school, that I can go in as an E3 initially, because again, I went in as enlisted in the beginning, not an officer. So I'm like, okay, well, that's easy. That means I can do some prep work, which was ROTC, before I got into the Army, which means that instead of me coming in as an E1, I would go in as an E3, which means, of course, more money, more rank, whatever, getting closer to the goal. And so that's what I did. I took the 3 years of high school, of ROTC in high school, so that I could go into the military as an E3. And again, that is you asking yourself, and that's my example of aligning what I've done with my true self. In other words, I always knew that the Army or the military was part of my life. I come from a line of military people. And what I mean by that, on my father's side, my father and his two siblings, as well as my grandfather, all served. And so now currently my oldest son is serving, right? And so I literally come in, I'm the firstborn on that side as far as grandchildren. So I had to join the military, right? I had to join the military. And so it was like, okay, my father and his brothers and everybody did. I'm the first grandchild. I have to join. So it was part of it. And so at 12 years old, I made that decision. And also my mom didn't have no money, so I ain't had no choice really. But I knew that I wanted to join the military. So because of that, I took ROTC, and it gave me the E3 once I went in. Now, when you think about your life and where you want to see it, what are you doing to align yourself with that? Say you decide, you know what, I want to, tour France, right? I want to tour France. Now, if you tour France, you already know it's going to cost you a lot of money. But okay, so what? So what are you doing? Are you learning to speak French now? Now, parlez-vous français? Like, is that what you're doing? Learning to speak French now, so that when you do tour France, you will have the ability to communicate with the locals, right? What are you doing to align yourself up with your life goals? Okay, that's what we're going to be doing in week 1. And then also your bonus reflection. What parts of your identity were shaped by survival or society expectations rather than choice? Again, a lot of what I went through in life was because of my survival. It was shaped by survival. So me being resilient came from me growing up in the hood, Detroit, Michigan. Okay. But at the same time, there were things that I had to leave there that I could not take with me forward. Because yes, I don't forget where I came from. I remember wholeheartedly where I come from, but I also knew that everything that shine ain't gold, right? Everything that glitter ain't gold. And so there was things about that environment where I had to leave behind. I couldn't bring it in the military, and I could not bring it in my post-military life, because those were things that weren't good for me. Okay. And then, of course, on the other side, you have your thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And so at the end of every week, this sheet will be available for you as just a place for you to put extra notes and things like that, right? Because you want to understand, like your thoughts, your feelings. Like when you think about this, what did it trigger? When you think about your life and where you see your life headed and how you want to live your life to the fullest potential, what came up for you? Was there something that came up for you? And on that sheet is where you put it, the thoughts, feelings, whatever. And if you need more sheets, then by all means. Okay. Now, I hope that I've thoroughly explained. I know I talk a little fast, so for some people, you might have to slow me down. Okay. But this again is week 1 for the life lessons with the specialization in self-actualization and resiliency. Now, I know that there's going to be questions, there's going to be whatever, and I encourage you not to use Google search on any of this. Okay. When you talk about all these assignments, I want to know because it's nothing where you're like, okay, what is this and what does this mean? No, the word self actualization, when you think about it, because there was something about this course that made you enroll in it, right? It was a word that caught your attention. So when you think about the word self actualize and you understood the meaning, now what else does it trigger in you? Okay. And I want you to really, really dive deep into the lessons here. And yeah, and I know that the next 8 weeks, you're going to get something from this course. All right. And so, with that being said, we will wrap this up. And if you have any questions, put them below, email them to me, and do whatever. And again, if you email me a question, a lot of times that means that you don't want to ask the question below. You're welcome to email me any questions or any concerns or whatever that you want to remain anonymous about. And I will answer those questions out loud because it may benefit someone else, but I will not include a name. Okay. Then that way you'll get what you need. And then somebody else who maybe didn't ask the question or didn't know they needed that information can get that information as well. All right. And so this concludes your week one. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.